Teachers, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? I apologize that I'm writing this on mobile, so there might be errors. I'm an English professor, and one year a pretty good student showed up without one of his two major term papers. He explained that his safe had been stolen by a contractor who was working on their house. His laptop was in the safe, and that's where his paper was. I genuinely believed him because he was a really good student. Then over the next few weeks, he started to show up to class looking very tired. He said that he was on a hunt for the person who stole his safe, and he was spending late nights with his cousin driving around looking for the guy because they knew his van. Now, the student and his cousin were both recently back from tours in Iraq and had seen combat experience. They wanted to find the guy to beat the crap out of him and get the safe back because his wife's wedding ring was in the safe as well as a bunch of cash. He rewrote the paper and turned it in, apologetic that it wasn't up to his usual quality, but he still kept coming to class looking like he hadn't slept. After a little while, he came very happy to my office hours, and he reported that he found the guy after a long search that involved breaking into an ice den, shaking people down with baseball bats, and even bribing some women. He said that they found the guy's van at a Taco Bell after getting a tip from a lady, and they cornered him and waited for the police to come. I read in the news that he had in fact done a citizen's arrest and stopped the guy at a Taco Bell, and that they ended up calling in the Secret Service because he used the cash that he stole from the safe to buy a bunch of counterfeiting equipment. The Secret Service apparently investigates counterfeiting, so the whole investigation happened because this guy, who I dubbed the White Shaft, tracked the scumbag down the bad side of town late at night to get a wedding ring, some cash, and his research paper back. It all turned out to be true. He got the ring and the laptop back. I gladly accepted his original paper, and it got a much higher grade than the rewrite. A couple people asked for more details, so here are a few more. I can't recall the year this happened, but it was at the height of the war with the US and Iraq. My student had enrolled in the Army right after 9/11 on the same day as his cousin. They were both just out of high school and enrolled due to patriotism and frustration. According to him, when he started his vigilante spree, he actually went inside of a house used by addicts to try and find the guy. They shook the house down with baseball bats and forced everyone out into the street. When the cops showed up, they told my student how dangerous this was and not to do it again. Then they gave him their cards and said, "But call us if you do." They shook down at least 2 other dens, and the same cop was waiting outside both times to arrest people since he didn't need to get a search warrant as everyone was outside now at the point of 2 baseball bats. I told my student how dangerous this all was, and he was very John Wick about getting his wife's wedding ring back. Also, I tried to find a link to the story, but it was a small story and the Googles aren't being very helpful since especially I can't remember the year. Again, thanks for the love and the gold, kind ones. All right, who the hell was your student? John Wick Jr. or something? But Jesus, he sounds like the main character of an action movie. Story 2. I've told this story before. Obligatory, not a teacher, but a student. I was constantly late to a class my senior year of high school. I had depression and was on a 504 plan as a result. And for this reason, I was allowed some extra time in the hallways before class to recover from the mental stress of being in a class, etc. It was super helpful and, yes, a pretty weird 504 plan. So one time I was running late and witnessed a car hit a pedestrian crossing the road, severely injuring him, and the car just drove away. My brother, who was into cars, recognized the car and identified it to me as our neighbor who was also in my first period class. I stopped to help the pedestrian, also a student at the school, because I had some first aid and lifeguard training. I called him an ambulance and waited for it to show up. I also called the school and told them that he would be going to the hospital. Yeah, pretty nice of me. So when I got to my school, my brother and I went down to the front office to get a note for tardiness. The admin I had called was waiting there. He thanked me, gave me a note, and told me to tell the teacher if there were any questions to call him. My brother told him about the car that he had recognized and that we knew the driver and who that person was. We both went to our classes. I got to the first period late again, and my teacher didn't even want to hear my excuse. I pressed the note into her hand and told her the story anyway. The driver of the car was sitting in the back of the classroom with a guilty look on her face. She looked scared as hell. When my teacher wouldn't stop giving me crap for my lie, I gave up and waited for justice to take its course. Now, for the record, I never lied when I came to class late. I always told the truth. I slept late. I never invoked my 504 plan for that particular class, even though my teacher knew about it and would be forced to accept it. Halfway through class, the administrator entered with the school resource officer and informed my teacher that the student needed to come with him right now for a hit and run. He saw that I was sitting there and thanked me again for my help and for putting another person's needs above my own. And man, it was nice to help that kid, but it was really nice to see my teacher's face go from disgusted at the driver to shocked and disgusted when she realized my story was true. Story 3. I teach a college freshman paper writing class. Over the course of the semester, we have 2 workshop sessions where students bring in their drafts and critique each other's drafts. Each one counts for 5% of the grade, and missing it unexcused means forfeiting that 5%. An excused absence makes the other workshop session worth 10% of the grade. Anyway, during the first workshop session, there was a student who I did not expect to be absent at all, but 60 minutes into the class hadn't shown up. Class is 90 minutes long. Normally, I wouldn't allow someone to come in that late, especially to a workshop session. However, he had the best excuse. He gave me this letter from a doctor at the PE department. Turns out he had judo for PE that morning. He was paired up with a more experienced sparring partner who flipped him upside down. He landed on his head, I think. Under symptoms, the note read that he had temporary memory loss and a possible concussion. Under recommendations, it said that he should go home. I asked him why he didn't go home. He said that he, quote, didn't want to deal with the complications of missing the workshop. I should note that my class was on the 5th floor of a building with no elevator and high ceilings, so he had already gone up 4 flights of stairs. I didn't want to waste his efforts, so I let him push through. He mentioned that he couldn't remember where he put his pen, needed to write comments on classmates' drafts, so I barked at one of his poor classmates to lend him one. Afterwards, I went to our faculty room and told them about it. They all called BS, and then I showed them the note, which completely changed their tone, started accusing me of creating a pressuring classroom environment, half joking, I think. Just want to clarify the timeline because I realized it might have caused some concern. The judo incident happened in the morning around 9 or 10 a.m. My class was from 4 to 5:30, with the student arriving at around 5-ish. In the time between the incident and the student arriving late to my class, he was able to rest, regained his memories, although possibly not totally since, again, he couldn't find his pen, and was cleared from having a concussion by a doctor. The doctor wrote the note to explain why he would miss classes because the recommendation was that he go straight home, which would mean taking public transport for about an hour. However, the student decided he might as well attend what's left of the class. He was still wearing the judo pants. He did a good job critiquing his classmates' works, by the way. Alright, I feel like there's something wrong with your university system if he is more scared of missing a class than potential brain injury. Story 4. Not a teacher, but my senior year of high school, they were doing construction on the building, and so part of it was completely closed. To make up for the lack of space, there was a vocational school nearby in the district that let us use the extra rooms they didn't use. To get to the other school, you could get on a bus, or if your last class of the day was at the vocational school, you could drive over there. I was driving a friend and myself over to the same English class. Traffic gets pretty stop and go at this time as there's a lot of buses and students all going to the same place. The kid behind me wasn't paying attention during one of these stop moments and rear-ended me. Now, it was stop and go traffic, so it wasn't like any of us were going fast. It was really just a bump. Still, everyone got out to see damage and make sure everyone was okay. We were all fine. We both had pieces of crap cars. We both decided that nothing was significant, may as well get back into the line of traffic and get to class. Bonus, the kid who hit me was also in that same English class. My friend and I walk into class late first. The teacher was known for being a stickler, very snidely says, "You two better have a good reason for being tardy." My friend laughs and I respond, "Yeah, another classmate just rear-ended us on the way here. You can confirm with him when he gets here." So a minute later, he rushes in saying, "Sorry, I'm tardy, I hit schoolie and friend." Rest of the class laughs, the stern teacher makes us all get down to business, the end. Well, what are the odds that both of them from class got into an accident with each other? At least they had each other's back when telling their story, just like how I know you guys will have my back, right? So please, whatever comes next, I'm asking you to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel because it really does help me out. Thank you in advance, and let's go ahead and get back to the stories. Story 5. Not a teacher, but when I was in elementary school, I remember an incident where I had a homework sheet I'd taken home to complete. I can't remember what the subject was. I do remember I spent most of my evening after dinner sitting at the table with my dad trying to complete it. This was torture. For some reason, my dad and I never connected in a learning environment. He would dictate things to me and expect me to get it, but he really struggled to walk me through the process needed for me to understand it. So after many hours of yelling and arguing and tears and being absolutely miserable, I finished the damn worksheet, set it down, and went to bed. In the morning, I woke up to discover a critical error with my homework. When I set it down to get ready for bed, I had set it on top of the bird cage instead of on top of the shelf next to it. I don't know why I thought to do this instead of putting it on the shelf. I can only assume I thought flat surface good in my poor, tired brain. My cockatiel was greatly offended by this mysterious new object on top of its home and had spent most of the night shredding my worksheet to pieces. I took the remains with me to school, and when they asked us to hand in our assignments, I kind of just looked at my teacher with a completely defeated expression on my face and uttered the words, my bird ate my homework." The uproar of laughter from the class was deafening. My teacher took the sheet from me and examined it carefully, then sighed as he tells me, "Well, it looks like you tore this page apart with a hole punch. Come see me after class." I didn't expect to be accused of lying, so in my shock, I started arguing with him. "No, really, my bird ate my homework," which only spurred the laughter from the class further. I didn't know what else to do. Did you ever get that frog in your throat feeling as a kid where your voice just seizes up and you can't manage to squeak out any sound no matter how much you try? For years afterwards, I'd get bullies making stupid "did your bird eat your homework again" jokes from kids that had been in that class. Adult me thinks it's kind of funny. I'd probably laugh too if it wasn't me. I had pushed myself, been pushed by my dad, so hard just to complete that damn assignment, only to have it ruined, be accused of lying, and then be embarrassed and teased for the situation. Poor 7-year-old Lanko just wasn't prepared for life yet, you know? Story 6. I was a student. My senior year in high school, I was dual enrolled at the local college taking some night classes, so I only had 2 classes at the high school that year. Unfortunately, the way the schedule worked, I had to go to first period and last period with the middle of the day off. Usually, I drive to the nearby wilderness area and go hiking by a river. On this particular day, there was an old van in the parking area at the trailhead. I parked right next to it and got out of my car. As I walked past the van, I noticed there was a man inside. We made eye contact and I smiled and waved, but then noticed that the dude was fully bare and enjoying his company. I freaked out, but instead of getting back in my car and peeling out like a not panicking person might do, I ran away from the parking area, straight through the river, about 2 to 3 feet deep, 20 feet across, and crouched in the bushes where I could see the parking lot. I was sure this guy was gonna chase after me, do unspeakable things, and then end me, and no one would know because it was like 1 p.m. on a Tuesday in the goddamn wilderness. When he didn't chase after me, I was still terrified he'd be waiting at my car for me, so I wasn't going back until I either saw him leave or another car pulled up. It was 2000, so I didn't have a cell phone, and I waited for over an hour for another car to show up. When it did, I emerged, ran back through the river, crawled into my car from the passenger side because the driver's side was next to the van, and sped away. I was 20 minutes late getting to my Spanish class, but I thought my teacher would understand given that I was still soaking wet up to my waist, and clearly some crap had gone down. But she wouldn't let me join the class until I'd explained my tardiness in Spanish. "Sorry, profesora, but you never taught us the Spanish word for getting handy." But I do think I was able to communicate my experience because she didn't punish me. In retrospect, I'm sure that guy was just enjoying a scenic moment at a time and place where he had a reasonable expectation of being alone. Definitely still creepy, but if he had been looking for teenagers to assault that day, the middle of nowhere during school hours probably wasn't the place to look. Story 7. The best ones are strings of excuses. This one was particularly memorable. Missed alarm because the power went out during the night. He was unable to charge his phone, and his backup was a radio clock which was plugged into the wall. Woke up when a pipe burst and flooded the house. The return of the power made the pumps come on a little too hard. Had to bail the house out before the water reached the books. Could still make it in time in the car, but a truck had overturned on the road. Waiting in traffic to go around it, car overheated and needed a tow. Since the phone hadn't charged, had to walk to the overturned truck to ask the traffic cops to call a tow instead. This walk was through cold mountain air, still wet from mopping up the house, caught a cold. Tow arrived, used tow driver's phone to call a friend. Friend drove me to my class, and that's why I'm arriving with only 15 minutes left on the exam clock, sniffling, dripping, and smelling like motor oil. He was allowed a makeup test when his cold passed. All right, over and over and over, the universe just tried to tell him, but he forged onward undaunted until even the universe had to accept defeat. Good fight. Story 8. Not a teacher, but I was the student. So I grew up on Martha's Vineyard, island off the coast of Massachusetts, but I went to a private school on Cape Cod, mainland Massachusetts, for high school. This meant that myself and about 20 other students took a boat to school every day, and if the weather was bad, then the boats don't run and we either get a later boat or we just don't go to school because we can't. Once we make port on the Cape, there's a bus that picks us up to take us the rest of the way to school. And one time, as we were standing at the boat terminal, we watched the bus waiting in line behind the other vehicles looking to get in line for the boat or to go to the pickup drop-off area. Everyone has to check in at this booth so that the dock workers can make sure each vehicle goes where they need to be and to ensure what I'm about to tell you doesn't happen. And our bus was behind a 16-wheeler truck looking to bring cargo over on the boat. The truck drove past the booth a little bit, but rather than wait for the booth attendant to walk to him, the driver began to back up to the booth. Now, anyone who has ever been in traffic or a line of vehicles can tell you that backing up is the worst thing you can do because the person behind you has nowhere to go. So the truck backed into the front of our bus and we had to wait for a different bus to pick us up. My buddy and I walked into our English class with 10 minutes left, and the new teacher gave us a ton of crap for missing the lesson. We wouldn't have cared if it weren't for the fact that we had been around 5 minutes late for every lesson due to us needing to take a boat, and then a bus to get to school, and she gave us crap every time we were late. The school administration knew about our unique situation and gave all the Martha's Vineyard students a pass to be late. So after getting this for this particular instance, we didn't bother explaining it to her again. We just walked down to the front office, went straight to the headmaster, and complained about how this teacher just refused to give us a break for circumstances we can't control. And that was the last we ever had to deal with her giving us crap for being late. Story 9. I was late for school because when I walked past my neighbor's house, her car was running, but she had run into her fence. A small part of the fence was downed. It seems she spilled yogurt all over and maybe lost control trying to clean it up. My mom always ate breakfast in the car on the way to work. I felt bad for her, the mess on the dash and window and the little white picket fence she had built with her husband. She had obviously backed out of their driveway, but when the car was put in drive, she messed up and hit the fence, spilling her yogurt. So I put down my books and went over to help her clean up. When I got to her car, I realized she was gone. I ran home to my mom, who called the cops. When I finally got to school about 2 hours late, they wanted to know why I was late. I found my neighbor with her head blown off. No one seemed to believe me and called my mom to inform her I was late and truant. It was resolved rather quickly since my mom was still talking to detectives and they explained to my principal. Turns out the yogurt was bits of her. Her husband was eventually arrested for murder and insurance fraud. He was an engineer that rigged the car to fire a hidden shotgun when the car was put into drive. P.S. Both Peggy, victim, and my mom were teachers at the time. Man, that's horrible. It would be difficult for me to sleep after experiencing something like that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video nonetheless, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy Cops, what BS-sounding excuse you got actually turned out to be true. I wouldn't believe the guy in story 3 either, but you have to hear it for yourself, so I'll see you in that video, and a big thank you for watching this one.